fit. Here we go, sleep hard. Oh, yeah.
Stop.
Okay.
Look at that face. That's the face of reality. The reality of a rebuffed husband. This episode is going to be as honest as possible. I prefer to keep this motovlog true to form. Truth is, spending this kind of time together wasn't all just royalty-free instrumental songs and sleek little transitions, synchronized at tempo with a dash of drone shots. Most of the production was often fraught with the occasional figures of authority trying to delete said drone footage of cultural heritage sites, or the incidental travel tiff with my sweetheart. And most of the post-production process is just me here, hunched over my laptop with slowly numbing butt cheeks. Las Nalgas are at about 50% sensation right now. Let's go back to the motovlog. The trip wasn't all just bug bites, heat, and sickness. That was definitely part of it, but farther removed from those discomforts leaves the returned-home traveler with a set of rose-lensed glasses at times. In spite of all that, I aim to separate the reality from the facade. Take this show, for example. A genuine cultural totem showcasing the female fantasy world of Paris, the so-called city of love. The typical American millennial in Paris isn't going to have some cosmo-colored lifestyle coupled with an urban dream job in fashion marketing. The typical American gal and the target audience of this Netflix series won't be swept off her feet by some titillating French-speaking lover boy downstairs. And the truth is, she knows it deep down. Like most singles my age, the viewer living vicariously through the protagonist is probably dissatisfied with the dating apps, unashamed to play the parasite in their parents' streaming services still, and often left feeling bereft and catching themselves doom-scrolling on social media, usually while lying in bed or sitting on the pot. That's reality. In all too familiar accordance with our modern preference for the appearance of such things as wistful youth, we prefer the facade rather than facing the sober realities of the world. Just look at social media. I once met a guy in Moldova while backpacking Eastern Europe. He was about sick of this sort of phenomenon characterizing the online behavior of travelers in the 21st century, a behavior of which I'm not innocent, admittedly. In protest, he'd only post the ugliest photos of whatever he came across while traveling. Not my style, but I saw his point. More in line with my style was this. My boy Joaquin and I went to Paris for the first time. It was a true troll-fueled bromance. Some said this was photoshopped because of the lighting. I guess we photoshopped these too. And I promise I'll tie this back to the motovlog. We hit the happiest place on earth the next day as well. Still blending in with the locals, of course. We even almost got into a fight with 5 French dudes trying to cut in line on the Pirates of the Caribbean. It made a bit of a scene, and during all the hubbub, we forgot we were dressed like total idiots.
But monsieur, this is not a jackhammer, it is a jackhammer.
A lot of the people there thought we actually worked at the amusement park, until they saw me holding my DSLR camera. We were a rare case of the facade becoming a reality, like art imitating reality, or the reverse. Then I got my cell phone pickpocketed that night in a moment of carelessness. How's that for a sobering reality? What really topped everything was our experience in the subway. We came across these American girls who were starry-eyed to be in Paris. They laughed at our inability to pronounce the different stops along the line. It's not that we knew French or anything. We weren't nearly as sophisticated as they were. And then suddenly, before their stop, one random lady sitting behind them puked all over the ground. She puked with such velocity that the vomit ricocheted off the ground, splashing the back of their cabs. She said sorry and then just moved to another seat. The girls acted like it wasn't a big deal until their stop came. They got off, and as the doors were shutting, you could hear them begin to yell. It was beautiful. The doors sealed shut and the shouting was muffled. In the end, that's how I'll always remember that city. A random lady's puke splashing the calves of some persnickety American girls. City of love, huh? Alright, enough of all that for now. Back to the vlog. We're still here in Tapijulapa. The last episode, we ended hanging out at this guy's place. We even added it as a point of interest in iOverlander. Boom. I had seen online that there were some hot springs nearby full of sulfur water. I thought, why not go check it out, have a little hike? So I rode on over to Parque Natural Via Luz. Sam's not feeling well, so I'm going to go around this morning and see what's around the area.
So what are you feeling, dear? Are you tired of all your fear? Trying to think less about what I want, more about everyone. So what is your big concern? Have you ever really seen yourself? Take another look through someone else's eyes. So I'll be your big surprise. All of the fights we shared, and all the tears that hold the lighted sun, and all this trust of late.
You can reach this destination by taking a boat from Tapijulapa, or you can just ride there like I did, until you reach the town of Rio Chispa. There you'll have to park, and then you cross the Apologetics River. If you can find your way around, there's all sorts of things. One of which attracted my attention the most, were the beautiful sulfurous waterfalls. And then, if you can find your way around, there's this one place, a cave, quite the emblematic place, where the blind sardine fishing is celebrated year after year. Both you have to have a guide for. I think just because I'm alone, I think they wouldn't make much money off me, because there's a lot of those guys. They just kind of let me be. Ain't no leaves like these in Texas. The cave, also known by Cueva de Villa Luz, is famous for its unique environment as it is dangerous for its visitors. The thermal sulfur springs within the cave feed enormous quantities of sulfur-loving bacteria, but other species are also tolerant of the toxic environment. The Villa Luz cave may be a small cave, but it is home to an incredible variety of life and an interesting food chain containing bacteria, bats, insects, and fish. It's also known as the Poison Cave. Through its passages runs fascinating, soft, milky blue water, unlike anything I've seen in any other cave. This unusual color forms when hydrogen sulfide gas rising from the ground reacts or oxidizes with the water. Surprisingly, even though this environment is highly toxic to humans, a giant food web thrives within this cave. I didn't spend too much time in it, by the way. Underground, these sardines swim near the surface of a pool. These fish are adapted to life underground. Despite living in total darkness, they still react to light, as they have not yet fully turned into blind, colorless cave creatures. The scent of sulfur is very strong in here. The fish in this pool, about a third of the way into the cave, still have some type of eyes that are slightly sunken. Sardines are adapting to life in the dark and show an adaptation halfway between the surface and the creature completely adapted to the cave. The cave is so fascinating as the fish in the twilight zone near the entrance have more color and more vision. Then as you move through the cave, the fish show characteristics more and more adapted to the cave itself. It's possible to see the evolution and progress in the space of 200 meters. Eventually, those at the back of the cave will be completely white and eyeless, and that's why it's named after these blind sardines. What in the Sam hell? Yeah, I can really tell this place is probably full of tourists usually. Because of the pandemic, I hadn't seen another person besides me. So, as you can see, this place is really set up for tourists. I hadn't seen another person besides me that's a tourist here. Everybody else is just a guide. So, because of the pandemic, it seems that this place has more or less become a bit of a ghost town, unfortunately. It's not a caseta de cobro for me. I don't gotta pay.
Washed it away. This time around I'm shedding my disguise. Ferbia, that'll be a big surprise.
Alright, welcome back to the bike. And by the way, none of this is color corrected, FYI. Thought I'd say that because this water is incredibly blue. After my hike, I saw this sign for hamburgers. Found this lady to make me a burger. I got the sign out here. I already asked the little girl inside where her parents were. Nobody was to be found, but now she's shown up, so here we go. I entered the chef's house and met her daughter and parrot while she cooked me a burger on the stovetop. It was a real family-friendly kind of restaurant. Pretty good burger, too. Oh, hay un loro.
Sí.
Wow.
Yes. Plumitas.
Y habla también.
Sí, dice Paulina, papá, mamá.
Paulina! Then, I made it back to Sam at the community hostel where she'd been recovering, with the help of the hosts there. The next day, we continued to the state of Campeche. Friggin' Mexican topes are destroying my skid plate. As you can see here below, the back bushings have completely separated. But the front, there you go, now you can see. The front's holding strong. So I don't see any use in repairing these right now because they're just gonna come dislodged again. Every time I go over those topes, I'm waiting to hear this thing just come crashing to the ground. Our route in this episode will take us into the Yucatan. Sam recovered enough to leave Tapijulapa with me the following day. We backtracked to Villahermosa, then rode back up to the coast, stopping in Ciudad del Carmen, mainly for this photo in honor of her close friend. Then we camped at Freedom Shores in Isla Aguada for a few sweaty days. Then we drove through Champoton, more on the significance of that place later, and finally made it to Mérida, where we will wrap up this episode. barrier island called Isla del Carmen and stayed one night in Ciudad del Carmen, just 40 kilometers short of Isla Aguada, our next destination for a couple days. I'd be remiss to not mention some of the interactions we'd had with people off camera, as most of the journey behind the scenes begins to grow fuzzy in my memory. However, a specific type of interaction with the Mexican people remains, still well-defined, down to every last bevel and edge, within the secret place, obscured to the hidden recesses of my soul. Just after loading the bike here the following morning, one of the workers at this hotel began to speak with me. He shared with me the testimony of how God had saved him from alcoholic annihilation. He had lost all things worthwhile in life, his family, dignity, and nearly the breath of life itself, till he was delivered from the gates of insanity or death. His family was still no longer in his life. He was still living with the wreckage of his past. I did nothing to incite his witness to me. He just wanted to share it. I don't know why. Maybe he does with all the guests. What I'm certain of, though, is the look in his eyes. It was irrefutable. In his person, there clearly stood a man who'd taken up his bed and walked again. I've only now spoken of this man or encounters like these on the road in Latin America. Truth be told, the trip was replete with these transcendent moments. Preferring not to shove a camera in their faces, I still believe in distinctions and reverence to separating the holy from the profane.
Isla Aguada.
Isla Aguada. On our way to Cancun. We're about 6.5 hours driving, right?
6.5, yeah.
So today I am going to give my partner a real foot massage. This is Travis, and he is making his own YouTube videos on jtmott. That's his channel. You can see our adventures. As you can see, our tent is behind us. We are going to go to the beach that is just beyond those RVs, where I will perform a foot massage on him.
I'll spare you the footage of my delightful beachside foot massage, given by my certified massage therapist wife. As you could see, we'd made it to Isla Aguada in the state of Campeche. If you didn't notice the arrangement of our tent over Sam's shoulder here, we never really put the cover on it. Our stay was a hot one. Some nights there was a breeze, other nights none at all. Those still nights had us peeling our skin off our inflatable sleeping mats. We spent 4 days at the campsite by the name of Freedom Shores. It's actually a great spot for road-weary travelers. We were located right about here on the island. As you can see, this is the side facing the laguna, not the Gulf. It was the best quality place for people like us to stay, and I could see why others left the place such good reviews on iOverlander. They do have rooms with AC, but that was an indulgence we didn't just always permit ourselves. We aren't the types who lounge around at beach resorts, sipping on drinks with little colorful umbrellas poking out. We were proud masochists on a motorcycle. The RV couples were somewhere in between. Self-styled solo travelers comforted by their own modern amenities. They had their ACs over 4 wheels. We had the sea and our hourly cold showers to keep us cool. Anyways, I wanted to make mention of the island and Freedom Shores. This guy, Jose Baeza Velueta, El Cello to his friends, gave me this book he wrote about the island. I found it compelling. One interesting tidbit I can't help but mention is something I found in the book that totally caught me by surprise. It was the link of the island with the JFK assassination. Turns out, John Connally, the 39th governor of Texas, later came to Isla Aguada with 17 other Texans to fish. The following is a translation directly from the book, Imágenes del pasado para verla con otros ojos. When Mr. John Connally visited Isla Aguada in the 60s, he was carrying in his body remnants of the bullet that passed through John Kennedy's body. Who would have guessed that the remains of the magic bullet would ever arrive in Isla Aguada? And who'd have guessed the hit was an inside job perpetrated via operatives of the American 3-letter agencies, the CIA? And who'd guess where we'd be now if JFK had continued living just 1 month after he had signed a national security order to pull all the troops out of Vietnam, or refusing to invade Laos? Where would the U.S. be if the administrative state hadn't false flagged us into every single war that followed? Who knows? Don't get suicided.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
These ideas are not representative of the writings of Jose Baeza. Getting back on track here, Jose decided to interview me for the island's Facebook page since he works in tourism. Thanks to him, fate would have me see my 15 minutes of Isla Aguada fame as the gringo-faced poster boy of the island.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Hello, sir. My name is Jose Baeza, and I saw you walking over there, and I was wondering myself, I want to ask some questions to that foreigner. And my first question is, what's your name?
Travis. My name is Travis Mott.
It's cool. What is your first impression when you first come to this island? What do you think? Could you tell me about this place?
Yeah, honestly, I thought that when we're getting here with my wife, it was perfect for what we're doing. We're traveling by Moto, and we arrived, and it's just a paradise. I looked, the water was a lot different than what I had seen. We've come from Veracruz.
Okay.
Yeah.
The sun is quite different. It's not really a white sun there in Veracruz.
Yeah, we're very impressed by this location.
Could you say some pro and some things about good things and bad things about this?
Sure.
What you have noticed?
Yeah, the pros are just the beauty of nature, everything here. I like how calm it is, actually, the water, and the people are incredibly friendly. Everybody here, it's more friendly than my own country.
Do you think it's worth it to come here?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Really?
I would come here again, totally. I would totally come here. The cons would just be, it's not as developed as you would think, a place that should have so much tourism. We were very surprised there's not much tourism here.
That's a good point, you know.
Yeah, it's nice for us to avoid big crowds, but at the same time, with bigger crowds comes more infrastructure and things like that.
That's true. Have you ever tried, have you seen dolphins?
Not yet.
Not yet, maybe today.
Yeah, maybe today. That'd be great. I would love that.
Excellent. And do you have we have a web page, a YouTube blog?
Sure
What's
do.
the address or how?
On YouTube, just write my name, Travis, Travis, Mott, M-A-O-T-T.
Excellent. Could you say just hello in Spanish to people that live here? You can understand that. You say goodbye.
Yeah, of course. Hola, me llamo Travis y estoy muy encantado de estar aquí.
Thank you, sir.
Si ya saben cómo me pongo, ¿para qué me invitan?
Freedom Shores is definitely a hot spot in the island. A sweet lady named Thelma ran it with a commanding, swift ease. In our short time there, we'd seen the sweet and vivacious 80-year-old tend to all the demands of running the place. such as tending to a local politician and his entire campaign team, along with all the guests, some Mexican, others from the States or Canada. That and corralling all the workers that ran the restaurant at Freedom Shores Motel, RV Resort, and Campsite.
Hola amigos, we are at Freedom Shores. These are my nuevo amigos. That's it. Bye bye, mi amigos.
Thelma and her husband, Bill, had bought the property in 2007. They renovated the entire hotel and RV park to be handicap accessible. They built something beautiful together that still stands to this day. In Jose's book, I also read Freedom Shores was called La Cabana in the 70s and 80s. Turns out it was also owned by another American man and his Mexican bride once before. They were the Clemesha family. Jose wrote of nostalgic times as a youth knowing their sons who shared their father's affinity for fishing, a passion which originally attracted the World War II vet to the island. Post-war, the former arms engineer Donald Alfred Clemesha was a businessman in the area. He'd passed through Tabasco and Campeche for business, often stopped to fish. He later came with his son, then his whole family to live there. Jose reported their boyhood full of remote plains, water skiing, fishing, and all the best toys of that time. Looking back on this time of his life, his son Alfred Clemesha Jr. said it was the best gift his father could have ever left as his legacy engraved on his son's heart. The Clemesha family moved there, buying and renovating the house of a local man named Jorge Ruega. This seemed to be the house Thelma now lives in, as I'd seen her retire there in the evenings after the sun was set. Just thumbing through the pages with these photos of these boys with their mom and dad from 50 years ago, the careless joys of boyhood is definitely palpable. In one photo you can see their blonde son looking out the window of their combi while crossing on the barge to get to school in Isla del Carmen. The barge, or panga, to the locals, is now a thing of the past. Nowadays everyone arrives in Isla Aguada by way of bridge, just as Sam and I did. What precipitated the construction of the bridge, known as Puente de la Unidad, carries a grim origin story. Tragically, one of the worst accidents of the state of Campeche occurred on the night of August 22, 1980. Due to bad weather conditions and government-ignored complaints of necessary maintenance for the barge, the marine transportation vessel known as Campeche sank just 200 meters away from its destination on the shores of Isla Aguada. Sadly, there isn't a precise death toll, but it is believed to be more than 50 people were lost that night. 4 decades later, the bereaved family members of victims continue to hold a religious ceremony at the old moorings of the barge. I didn't know it at the time, but the little stretch of sandy beach accessed by way of Freedom Shores is home to the ceremonial site. Sam and I had enjoyed the swing just next to it, not knowing anything of it. Not aware it was there, the families gathered every year, blithely carrying on, just swinging and thinking nothing of the dead. Incidentally, like most mortals living in modernity, we moved back and forth next to the town banner for mortality, thinking for not a second of our inevitable appointment with life after life. Never was the Latin trope, memento mori, so thinly veiled just beneath our detection after having left Central Texas on that red bike I'd named after my deceased grandmother.
Aw man, this is what you don't do to your shoes. You don't put anything next to the exhaust. These are my Birkenstocks.
Pobrecita Sam. So we hit the road bound for Mérida. Earlier in this episode, I promised to explain the significance of the city of Champoton. The story dates back over 500 years. As we ride to the Yucatan, we pass the famous site of the first Spanish defeat to the native Chantal Maya people. To this day, the battle site remains contentiously named as it is touchstone in determining fidelity to contemporary views on the subject. Just look at the statue standing tall and proud in Champoton, and you may see just what I am talking about. Here you got a Chantal Mayan warrior by the name of Moch, obsidian spear and club in hand, standing victoriously over the helmet of a 16th century Spanish soldier. If you don't follow me, you'll understand what I mean soon. For starters, just look at the identity crisis we have in the West right now. The age of exploration is very compelling to me. Don't you dare call it the age of discovery, though. And if you have the temerity to call the second Monday of October Columbus Day here in the States, you are basically offering your bare chest to a Tenochtitlan-styled blood sacrifice on social media. First, let's introduce our sources. A man at the heart of the beginning of European involvement in North America. Enter Bernal Diaz, a Spanish conquistador and chronicler. I quoted him back in my Hernan Cortes Identifies as Amigo episode. Diaz wrote a memoir as the last survivor of the conquest of Mexico. He was over 70 when he wrote it, and damn lucky to see such a ripe old age. He was born in 1492. He had been in Panama in 1514, and been a member of both the Cordoba and Grijalva expeditions that preceded Cortes in Mexico, of which he was also involved. I'll get to the Grijalva expedition more later, but the one concerning the Spanish defeat in Champoton was that of Francisco Hernandez de Cordoba. A quick disclaimer here first. We must understand when it comes to conquistadors, there was definitely a selection factor at play. Think of meeting someone nowadays willing to sail for months on end over the high seas to dangerous, mysterious lands, to literally get rich or die trying, 50 Cent style, while going all medieval on some native mamma jammas that literally wanted to capture them and rip out their beating heart, which would then be placed in a bowl held by a statue of a demon, in their eyes. These were very hardened men with high rates of sociopathy, ready to fight what they considered worshippers of demons. There were no saints in this story, only soldiers. These were incredibly brutal and vicious times, of the likes of which not a single limp-wristed linguini spine online critic with their keyboard courage possibly lasts a single day on the front line, without getting either killed or captured to be sacrificed, which basically meant being laid chest up on an altar having your limbs held to a rock while an obsidian blade pierced your sternum, revealing your still palpitating heart, then your head cut off for ornamentation and your arms and legs too to be eaten with chili peppers. The torso was left for the pumas in the wild. So let's get on with it. The abridged version of the story goes as follows. From the data we have on hand, one could make the case that Cordoba discovered Yucatan by accident, thanks to a storm driving his expedition off course. From there, the Spanish made their way, encountering different city-states filled with the Mayan people. The Spanish had mixed receptions by the Maya while traveling along the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. Some seemingly friendly, others not at all. The Spanish kidnapped 2 Maya who would later be coerced into serving as translators, all the while seeing the Mayan towns full of altars covered in blood from human sacrifice. By the time the Spanish arrived in Champoton, they were in desperate need of water. While in search for it, they encountered Mayan warriors. The Spanish spent a no doubt uneasy night listening to the howl of Maya war cries, accompanied by the beating of drums and the playing of flutes. They made the tactical mistake of camping on the beach instead of returning to their ships that night. By dawn, the Spanish were surrounded. The Battle of Champoton was fully underway. The ensuing fight was to result in 86 Spanish soldiers wounded. Bernal Diaz wrote he and his companions were outnumbered by 200 to 1. He was to be hit with 3 different arrows, one catching him in the ribs. Cordoba ended up suffering from 33 wounds on his body. 2 Spanish were captured alive and very likely sacrificed. Oh, and by the way, we saw this place online and just had to see it for ourselves. It is along the way from Champoton to Mérida in a town named Pomuch.
So if you've ever watched Dark Tourist on Netflix, it is a man, I believe he's Kiwi, and he goes to some wild places to see their culture and tradition based on legend, folklore. And if you watch the episode on Indonesia, you see the Indonesians walking around with these skeletons, these corpses.
So now we are in Pomuch, where they still practice the ancient Mayan tradition of exhuming the dead after they've been passed for 3 years or so on Dia de los Muertos. They say it's an exciting day to be here to see it for yourself. Here's the outside of it. Respect and silence.
Oh,
That's a cool culture to keep and preserve, and I'm glad we got to see it, being from the north. If we're all North Americans and it's one land, I'm happy to learn their culture.
It's interesting for me to see how we deal with death and how much it very much is tied into the culture, just like gastronomy, just like anywhere you'd go with any certain feature a culture may have. Death is such a sanitized, separate thing from our daily lives now that it just, I don't know, you can't help but be compelled to just go and look. Although it's macabre, I was obviously enticed to go and check it out. Thanks for letting me know about it, Overlander. It is April 26th. We are almost to the Yucatan, and it is friggin' hot as hell in Mexico. Over 100 degrees, cooking, baby. Got wildfires. Got these tuk-tuks and bones. I hope like hell they don't haunt us. So, yeah. Alright, on to Merida. We made it to the Yucatan. Now, Samandai and her mother had crossed Mexico from peninsula to peninsula. Okay, in a moment I'll get back to the story about the Battle of Champoton, a victorious Mayan tale of native martial fortitude which lit the fuse for a much more protracted spate of seeming interminable fights following the toppling of Tenochtitlan. So often, we in the States think of the Spanish conquest as a singular event punctuated by Cortez's bringing down of the Mexica, aka the Aztecs. Yet no one considers how the Maya fared in the fighting. Another interesting thing I grew to learn was their fierce spirit for independence, still alive and well 300 plus years later. It turns out they have a link to Texas too. The Second Republic of Yucatan reaffirmed its independence from federal authorities, since it was much more of an island than a peninsula, as there was no roads from Mexico City to the peninsula back in the days of the Alamo. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna's centralist bent was busy trying to regain control over the rebellious Republic of Texas around 1835 to 1845. So evidently the light for freedom burnt bright across the Gulf. The flag of Yucatan was even modeled after Texas standard, but its colors mimicked those of the Mexican flag, red and green.
The eyes of Texas are upon you all the live long day.
Santa Anna had it coming.
We all have it coming, kid.
Okay, now let's get back to the Battle of Champoton. I left off with Bernal Diaz getting wounded, which, by the way, was pretty much the first of many wounds he was to take at pretty much every battle he'd fight in, which were a lot. The guy was an undying pincushion who was good with a blade, loved Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and liked to write apparently. According to Diaz, 55 Spanish were killed, either dying in Champoton or later from wounds suffered there, which would have been half of their expedition. Desperately, they retreated to their boats, all the while being pursued. Cordoba later succumbed to his wounds after returning to Cuba. This was the first battle won by the Maya people, defeating the Spanish invaders. It took place on March 25th, 1517. I'm posting this video on Columbus Day in 2023, which means just 2 years ago, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador presided over a ceremony and a reenactment took place in Champoton, marking the 504th anniversary of the battle.
Denied.
Remember how I mentioned events like these serve as a touchstone in determining fidelity to one worldview or the other? Well, this is what President Obrador had to say about it. This ceremony is an homage to the anonymous heroes of the indigenous resistance who resisted as long as they could the 3 centuries of oppression under the colonial regime. Traditionally, the historical event has been known as La Batalla de la Mala Pelea, or the Bad Battle. Mexico now wants to call it the Good Battle, similar to the approach the government has taken in renaming famous conquest sites originally named by the Spaniards. If I had the chance to ask President Obrador, I'd want to know what morality he'd suggest society ought to practice instead, considering the pervasive Catholic model practiced as a result of the conquest is what ultimately prevailed. Of these adjustments and renaming things, they leave one to believe he'd rather us return to a pre-Columbian / pre-Christian morality, which turns out to not leave much to be desired for us non-cannibals. So what is the third option? What moral code is offered other than this reactionary perversion of the status quo? Last I checked, the traditional name remains on Google Maps, for now. For me, this tug-of-war of historical framing between the traditionalists and the historical revisionists seems best summed up in the words of the celebrated Mexican poet Octavio Paz. Let's consider what his literary rival Carlos Fuentes had to say. The two seldom agreed on anything, but on this they did. Fuentes, speaking for the Mexicans of today, claims, "We have not overcome the trauma of the conquest. We behaved like a colonized country. We were born of a crime of extreme cruelty, but we were able to build ourselves and have created a culture that is Spanish, Catholic, mestizo." For now, I'll leave it here. Before my next motovlog video, however, I hope to release the following one making the unpopular claim that Dia de los Muertos isn't uniquely Mexican. Hope to get it out there before the Day of the Dead. Godspeed.